The challenge before the throne. The grand hall of Velmora's palace was silent, filled with glowing torches and silver banners that shimmered in the air. The nobles sat in golden chairs, their alien eyes full of excitement. They had gathered to witness a special event, something Queen Zarella had planned to entertain them. A human had been brought from the lower colonies. To them, humans were weak, soft, and unworthy of respect. But today, one was chosen for public humiliation. His name was Darren Vale. He was dragged into the hall by 2 armored guards, his hands chained, his shirt torn. His face had cuts, but his eyes showed no fear. He walked straight, without looking down. Queen Zarella sat high on her crystal throne. Her skin glowed faintly blue, her crown sharp and cold like ice. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that meant trouble. "You are the one they call human soldier?" she asked, her voice echoing through the hall. Darren raised his head. "Yes," he said calmly. "Today you will be reminded of your place," she said. "My champion Vaxtree will show you mercy by not killing you, but your pride will not survive." The crowd laughed. Some aliens clapped. They were ready to enjoy the show. Vaxtree stepped forward. She was tall, armored, and carried a glowing double blade. Her muscles were strong, her face serious. She was Queen Zarella's most trusted warrior and had never lost a fight. Duran looked at her, then back at the queen. "If she's your strongest, then I must have already won," he said softly. The crowd gasped. Vaxtree's eyes narrowed. "You speak boldly for someone in chains," she replied. "Chains don't decide strength," he said. Queen Zarella raised her hand. "Begin." The guard stepped back. The hall grew quiet. Vaxtree rushed forward, her blade spinning. She aimed for his shoulder, quick and deadly. But to everyone's shock, Duran ducked. The blade missed him by an inch. He moved fast. Too fast for a human. Vaxtree turned quickly and struck again. This time he caught her arm, pushed her back, and made her stumble. The crowd stood up. This wasn't right. Vaxtree tried again, now with more force. Her strikes were fast, powerful. She used kicks, spins, and every combat trick she knew. But Darren dodged them all. Sometimes, he barely moved. But it was always enough. He didn't fight like a soldier. He fought like someone who had been trained to study his enemy. Queen Zarella's smile faded. Her fingers curled around the edge of her throne. Vaxtree growled and charged with full power, her blade glowing hotter. She aimed a deadly blow straight for his chest. Darren stepped aside. Not only did he avoid the strike, he touched the back of her neck gently, like he knew exactly where she was weakest. Vaxtree froze. Her blade fell from her hand. Her knees gave way. The warrior was down. The hall was silent. Even the wind outside seemed to stop. Queen Zarella stood slowly. Her voice was sharp and cold. "How did you—" Darren didn't smile. "You trained her well. But you forgot something." "What?" she asked. "I wasn't raised on comfort. I was raised in war," he said. "And I've studied your people, your moves, your mistakes." Vaxtree stayed on the floor, breathing hard. Her pride was crushed. She had never lost before. Queen Zarella looked around. Her court was speechless. Her champion was defeated, and the law of the land was clear. If a warrior chosen by the queen is defeated in public combat, the winner earns a reward. But what would a human dare to ask? Darren stood tall, still calm. "Your Highness," he said. Queen Zarella narrowed her eyes. "Yes. I know the law of Velmora," he said, "and by that law, I claim my reward." The hall held its breath. "Freedom?" she asked bitterly. "No," he said. Her voice became a whisper. "Then what?" He looked down at Vaxtree, then back at the queen. "I want her hand in marriage," gasps echoed. Some shouted. Others fell silent again. Vaxtree's head lifted. In shock, Queen Zarella's eyes burned with fury, but she couldn't deny the law. The human who didn't fall, The hall of Velmora remained frozen. Nobles stared. Guards held their breath. Even Queen Xyrella, powerful ruler of 12 systems, didn't speak for a long moment. Darren Vale had done what no human had ever dared. He defeated the Queen's best warrior and asked for her hand in marriage. You joke, Queen Xyrella said slowly, though her voice shook with something darker than anger. Fear. I never joke about law, Darren replied, his voice calm. And your law is clear. Vaxtree, still kneeling on the ground, looked up at him. Her face was pale, confused, and full of shame. The last thing she had expected was mercy. Even worse. Marriage. Queen Xyrella clenched her jaw. Guards, she commanded, take him away. We will settle this in private. But one of the royal judges stood up. He was old, with silver skin and glowing yellow eyes. His voice echoed through the room. Your Majesty, the law is public, and so must be its judgment. Xyrella glared at him. He is human. So was your great-grandmother, he replied without fear. A whisper ran through the crowd. Xyrella's bloodline was sacred, but not pure. She sat down slowly, her hands shaking under her robe. So be it, she said at last. The wedding shall take place within 3 moons. Until then, the human will remain under palace watch. Darren said nothing. He looked at Vaxtree, then at the Queen. His face showed no triumph, only purpose. That night, Vaxtree sat alone in her chamber, staring at her own hands. They were strong. They had ended dozens of battles, but today they had failed her. Her pride was broken, and worse than that, she didn't understand him. That human, Darren, he could have asked for freedom, or demanded gold, or simply destroyed her when he had the chance. But instead he chose her. Was it a trick? Was he seeking power through royal marriage? Or was it something else? The door to her room slid open. 2 guards stepped in, followed by Darren. Vaxtree stood quickly, but without hostility. The guards waited. I asked to speak to her alone, Darren said. The taller guard nodded. 10 minutes, no more. As the door closed behind them, silence filled the room. Only the soft sound of the wind from the mountains could be heard through the open window. Vaxtree crossed her arms. So, why? She asked. Because I need your help, he answered simply. Help? She blinked. You humiliate me before the Queen's court, then ask for my help? I didn't humiliate you, he said gently. I revealed the truth. Vaxtree narrowed her eyes. What truth? That you're not just a warrior. You're a prisoner too, he said. You just haven't realized it yet. For a moment, she laughed bitterly. I'm the Queen's champion. I have command over 4 battle squadrons. I sleep in silk. I'm not a prisoner. Darren stepped closer. You fight. You win. You serve. But you never ask questions. You never wonder why your enemies look like you, bleed like you. Why so many of your battle opponents scream in a language close to yours. Her lips parted. Her body tensed. You think you're alien? He continued. But you're not as pure as they say. Your blood, your strength was designed, not born. Vaxtree stepped back. You speak nonsense. Then come with me, he whispered. Let me show you what's under this palace. What the Queen is hiding from even you. Before she could answer, the guards returned. Time's up, one said. Darren looked at her one last time. The choice is yours, but know this. I didn't choose marriage to control you. I chose it to free you. He left with the guards, and Vaxtree for the first time in her life felt a war rising inside her that no sword could fight. Later that night, she couldn't sleep. His words repeated in her mind like a battle drum. So, she made her decision. Dressed in a dark cloak, she slipped past her chamber's motion walls and moved through the servant passages. As champion, she knew every hallway in the palace. But tonight she walked with a new purpose. She reached the lower levels, where no royal dared to go, where the stones were older than the palace itself, and there she found him, waiting. You came, he said. Show me. she replied. Darren led her through a hidden door, deep into the forgotten underground. There were no lights, only glowing stones and ancient machines, blinking slowly as if half asleep. They entered a massive hall, filled with tubes and data pods. Baxter's eyes widened. Inside the glass chambers were bodies, not dead, preserved, human-like. Some had blue skin like hers, others were hybrids, and each one was marked by a strange royal symbol, the same crest carved into her own blade. These are your ancestors, Darren said. Warriors, taken, modified, reshaped to serve the queens of Velmora. Baxter stood frozen, her breath shallow. You were never born a champion, he whispered. You were made into one. The law of the arena. Baxter stood in silence. Her breath was slow. Her heart felt heavy in her chest. Around her were the preserved bodies, half human, half alien. They looked like her, like broken reflections in a mirror. These can't be real, she said, though her voice trembled. They are, Darren answered. They were warriors, some taken from Earth, others bred in secret chambers beneath this palace. The Queen's bloodline used them to build soldiers, like you. Baxter touched one of the glass tubes. Inside was a female with skin like hers, but older and scared. Her eyes were frozen open. Why would she do this? Baxter asked. Because fear hides behind power, Darren said. The Queens knew that someday, humans would rise again, so they created stronger, faster versions of us, but kept them loyal through lies. Baxter looked at her own hands. They had crushed bones, held blades, earned medals. But now, they felt like hands she didn't even know. You were supposed to win that fight, Darren continued. You were trained to humiliate me, but you hesitated. I didn't, she snapped. I gave everything. No, he said softly. You held back. Something inside you knew. I wasn't your enemy. She turned away. He was right. Deep inside her, something had stopped her. Not fear, recognition. Hours passed before Baxter returned to her chamber. She didn't sleep. The next morning, she stood in the Queen's war hall, her armor polished, her face unreadable. Queen Zirella sat on her throne, surrounded by advisors. You look troubled, champion, the Queen said. I request to speak, Baxter replied calmly. The Queen raised a brow. Speak then. The human did not defeat me by accident. He earned it, she said. I lost with honor. Gasps rippled through the advisors. The Queen's smile faded. And by Velmoran law, Baxter continued, I am now bound to him by right. You dare embrace this shame? Zirella hissed. No, Baxter said. I dare embrace the law. Silence. Then a whisper. And then Zirella stood. Very well, she said. But let the court remember. Laws can be weapons too. 3 days later, the arena of honor was full. The Queen had called for the law of final challenge. An ancient rule that allowed a queen to reject a union by calling for one last test. If the human failed, the marriage would be void, and his life forfeited. The challenge: survive the gauntlet. A test of strength, mind, and heart. Darren stood in the middle of the stone arena. He wore no armor, just a dark shirt and gloves. Above him, high in the stands, the Queen sat with cold eyes. Beside her, Baxter wore ceremonial robes, neither captive nor free. Begin, the Queen commanded. Gates opened. 3 robotic warriors charged out, armed with bladed whips and flame-tipped staffs. The crowd cheered, expecting blood. But Darren was ready. He moved like water, dodging the whip, flipping over the fire staff, using their own weapons against them. He wasn't the strongest, but he was smart, patient, deadly in his focus. The robots fell, but that was only phase 1. The arena floor opened again. This time, a creature crawled out, tall, 4-legged, with eyes that burned red. A Venker hound, used in war to kill at command. It charged. Darren didn't run. He dropped his weapons. The crowd gasped. He held out his hand. The hound skidded to a stop just inches from him. It sniffed. His palm. Then it sat. Even the queen stood up in shock. "What?" she whispered. Darren turned to her and shouted, "You created monsters, but you forgot. Some creatures still remember kindness." The crowd went silent. Then something even stranger happened. The hound growled and looked at Queen Zarella, not in fear, in hatred. The queen stood furious. "End this, guards, attack him now." But half her guards hesitated. Some even lowered their weapons. Something had changed. The people had seen too much, felt too much, and the truth was leaking into their minds like cracks in a dam. One of the royal advisors stood. "Your Highness, if he survives, and no rules are broken, then the law stands. He must die," she screamed. "He's corrupting our blood." "Or setting it free," Vaxtree said softly beside her. Queen Zarella turned. "You dare betray me?" Vaxtree didn't flinch. "I dare open my eyes." Darren stood in the center of the arena, breathing hard. He had passed the final trial. By Velmoran law, he was now part of the royal line, and the queen, powerless to stop. The crowd began to cheer, not for the queen, not for tradition, but for change. The forced union, the palace was silent that morning. No bells rang, no music played, no crowds gathered in the square. Yet it was the day of the royal wedding, the first between a human and a Velmoran warrior in recorded history. Inside her chamber, Vaxtree stood facing the mirror. The ceremonial robe she wore shimmered like moonlight, but her face was blank. Her heart, however, was a battlefield. Not because she hated him, but because she didn't understand him. Why hadn't he asked for power? Why hadn't he taken revenge? After humiliating her before the court, why had he chosen marriage? A soft knock echoed at the door. The queen entered without permission, her robe made of black crystal threads and her mood darker than ever. "You can still refuse, Queen Zarella," said Vaxtree turned slowly. "And shame my name for eternity? Better shame than chains," the queen hissed. "This is not love. This is conquest." Vaxtree stared at her for a long moment. "What if it's neither?" The queen's lips tightened. "Then it's war in disguise." She left without another word. At the garden altar, under a glowing veil of bioluminescent vines, Darren stood quietly. No guards, no armor, just him. He didn't smile, but he didn't look afraid either. Vaxtree walked toward him alone. No family behind her, no friends beside her. Only whispers from the shadows and cold stares from alien nobles who believed their world was being torn apart. When she stopped beside him, he leaned in slightly. "You look strong," he whispered. "I feel nothing," she replied flatly. "That's still better than feeling broken." Before she could reply, the priest began the vows. "By blood, by battle, by binding, do you join?" Vaxtree hesitated. The entire court leaned forward. "Yes," she said at last. Darren answered quietly. "Yes." They touched palms. The bond was sealed. But instead of joy, the moment felt like lightning waiting to strike. That night, the palace was too quiet. Vaxtree sat in the room given to them. Large, beautiful, but unfamiliar. She didn't look at the bed. She sat by the window instead. Darren entered later, placing a small device on the table, a glowing cube with blinking lights. "What is that?" she asked. "A memory box," he said. "From a planet your people erased. It holds images, truths, stories of people like me. And you," she didn't answer. "You think I married you to punish you?" he said gently. "Isn't that what this is?" she snapped. "A joke? A game? To make me feel small?" He sat across from her. "I married you because I needed to be close to. The one person strong enough to stand against the queen and live." Vaxtree turned her head. "I'm her weapon." "You were," he corrected. "But you already changed. You think you know me? I know you watched the hound in the arena and you felt something." Her silence confirmed it. Suddenly, the wall lights dimmed. The room's control crystal blinked red. "What's happening?" Vaxtree asked. Darren moved fast. He checked the window. Guards were moving outside. The hallway lights had gone dark. Emergency protocols had been activated. "She's making her move," he said. "Who?" "Your queen." Beneath the palace, Queen Zirella stood before the High Council. "He must not live past tonight," she ordered. "The people are divided, but a sudden accident will return their fear." "I'll blame old enemies." "And Vaxtree?" one advisor asked. The queen's eyes narrowed. "If she sides with him, she's no daughter of Velmora." Back in the royal quarters, Vaxtree pulled out her blade. "We're being hunted." Daran nodded. "And we're not running." He touched the memory cube. It expanded, glowing brighter. Voices echoed from it. Images of human children, alien soldiers, hybrid rebels, and old Velmoran warlords whispering about Project Dawnblood. Vaxtree froze. "What is this?" she whispered. "The secret that will break the throne," he said. "Your queen erased history, bred warriors, hid bloodlines. This is the truth." Vaxtree looked down at her own hands again. "We need to move," she said suddenly. "There's a place, deeper in the palace, old records, forgotten roots." Darren followed without hesitation. They ran through silent halls, past old murals and sealed doors until they reached a chamber guarded by two heavy stone statues. Vaxtree placed her palm on the wall. It opened, inside. Were books. Real books. Old ones, with covers made of alien leather, and in the center a page with symbols both Vaxtree and Daran could read. It said, "When the blood of human and warrior binds, the crown must kneel." Vaxtree's eyes widened. "This union was prophesied?" "No," Daran whispered. "It was forbidden." Suddenly, behind them, footsteps. The secret under the palace. The footsteps behind them grew louder. Vaxtree turned fast, sword drawn. Her heart pounded. Daran stepped beside her, calm but alert. 3 armored figures appeared at the doorway, palace guards. But they didn't attack. Instead, one of them lowered their weapon and spoke in a low voice. "We saw the memory cube," she said. "We believe you." Vaxtree narrowed her eyes. "You're not loyal to the queen?" The guard removed her helmet. Her face showed traces of human features. Her skin was pale blue, but her eyes were too round, too soft. "I'm not loyal to..." "Lies," she said. The other 2 guards removed their helmets too. Both were hybrids, just like her. "We are not alone," the first one whispered. "Dozens of us serve in silence, born in labs, trained in fear. But you, Vaxtree, you just became our voice." Vaxtree stared at them, her grip on the sword loosening. "Then help us," Darren said. "We need time, and we need proof." The guard nodded. "Then you'll need to reach the core library. Deeper than even this, sealed since the last war." Vaxtree turned toward the old books behind her, then toward the hidden tunnel below the chamber. "Then we go deeper." The tunnel was narrow, wet, and full of dust. Old bones lined the sides, forgotten warriors, buried without names. Vaxtree moved, first torch in hand. Her steps were steady, but her mind was storming. Why would they hide this? She asked quietly. "Because truth is louder than fear," Darren said behind her. "And fear is what the queen needs to stay in power." After an hour of walking, they reached an iron door with alien carvings. Vaxtree placed her hand on the door's center. It pulsed once, and then opened. The chamber inside was round, made of silver stone and glowing lines that pulsed like veins. In the center stood a single column, with a glowing orb floating above it. Daran stepped closer. The orb reacted to his presence. Images flickered inside. War, experiments, queens arguing, scientists recording data, and then Vaxtree's face. As a child, her eyes wide, her arms marked with codes, she gasped. "They watched me," she whispered. They made you, Darren said, voice heavy. But you became something else. Something they couldn't control. A flash appeared next. Queen Zarella, younger, screaming at a human elder. They will never rule. Again. Never. I'll build better ones. And then, silence. Baxter stepped back. Her breathing quickened. I was part of this, she whispered. A weapon born from war. And now, Darren said, stepping closer, you're the key to peace. The orb dimmed, but left behind a small data crystal. Darren took it. We show this to the people, the council, the systems. Everything changes. You won't make it to the council alive, said a voice from the tunnel behind them. They turned fast. Queen Zarella stood there, her armor glowing, her eyes wild. She had come alone. But she didn't need an army. She had rage and secrets. You've gone far enough, she said, stepping into the light. You've broken sacred walls, touched forbidden fire, and corrupted my champion. I opened her eyes, Duran replied. You filled her with filth, the queen screamed. I gave her strength, purpose, a name. You gave her chains, Baxter said coldly. The queen paused. So, she sneered. You turn your back on your maker? Baxter raised her blade. I'm not your creation anymore, Queen Zarella smiled. A twisted, cruel thing. Then fight me, she whispered. The duel began without warning. Zarella attacked like lightning, her blade moving in impossible patterns. But Baxter didn't back down. Metal clashed. Sparks flew. Blood touched the stone floor. Darren stepped back, guarding the crystal, watching the most dangerous warrior in the galaxy fight the queen who built her. Baxter was fast, but Zarella knew every move, because she trained her. Every swing, every block, every turn. The queen expected it, and that's when Baxter changed. She stopped fighting like a warrior, and started fighting like herself. She dropped into a stance no one had ever taught her. Wild, fluid, unpredictable. Zarella stumbled. One final strike. And her blade fell from her hand. The queen dropped to her knees, breathless. Baxter stood over her, sword raised. Do it, Zarella hissed. No, Baxter whispered. I won't become what you made me. She turned away. Zarella screamed in fury. But Dari stepped forward and held up the crystal. The people will see. And they will choose who their queen really is. As they left the chamber, Baxter looked back one last time. Her past lay buried beneath stone, but her future had just begun. The rebellion of two. The sky above Velmora turned strange. Ships hovered in silence. Clouds swirled in violet rings. And in the palace's heart, the truth began to spread like fire. Within hours of escaping the chamber beneath the palace, Baxter and Darren sent the memory crystal to every system connected to the Queen's rule. Hidden supporters helped them. Palace workers, quiet hybrids, even a few council guards. On every screen the same message played. The truth of Project Dawnblood, the secret of the warrior experiments, the stolen lives, and the forbidden union that was meant to destroy the old order. And then they saw her. Baxter, the Queen's champion, standing beside a human, not as prisoner, but as partner. Across the empire, people whispered. Some gasped. Others stood up. On the planet Kalar, a young hybrid girl cried when she saw Baxter's face. She looks like me, she said. On the icy moon of Iriel, an old soldier turned off his monitor, then picked up his long-hidden weapons again. It's time, he said. Rebellion had begun, but the palace would strike back. Queen Zarella's screams echoed through the throne room. Traitors, she shouted. Every one of them. Her advisors stood frozen. The council chamber had never felt so cold. We must control the message, one said, weakly. We must crush the girl, another added. Zarella slammed her hand on the table. No, we crush both. No more secrets, no more mercy. She turned to her generals. Release the ghost fleet, she said. But your majesty, those ships haven't been used in... I said now, deep underground, in an old war bunker now, turned into a hidden command center. Vaxtree and Darren stood over a holographic map. Flashes showed every planet where rebellion had started. A red wave was moving through the stars. But blue lights began blinking too. "What are those?" Vaxtree asked. "Fleet movements," said one rebel technician. "She's activating weapons we thought were dead." "Then she's scared," Darren said. "And scared queens make mistakes. So do tired warriors," Vaxtree added quietly. He looked at her. Her armor was scratched. Her face had small wounds. Her eyes, once cold, now burned with purpose. He stepped closer. "You don't have to do this alone." "I'm not alone anymore," she said. That's the part she fears the most. That night, they held a secret gathering at the ancient ruins of Velkarn Temple, once a sacred place before the queens banned it. Under the broken stars, 1,000 beings gathered. Humans, hybrids, even some pure-blood aliens who wanted peace. Vaxtree stood before them. No crown, no throne, just her. "I was born from lies," she said, "trained to serve power, to break those who were weaker. But I was never told the truth, that I was made from the very blood my queen hated." Silence. Then she raised her sword, not to threaten, but to offer. "This blade has drawn blood, for the wrong cause. Today it fights for freedom." Cheers erupted, hands raised, and hearts awakened. As dawn broke, Vaxtree and Darren received word. Queen Zarella had declared them enemies of the state. Bounties were placed on their heads. Their images were burned in the capital squares. And then came the Queen's final strike. A message broadcast across every system. "The false champion and her human mate will fall today. The Ghost Fleet has launched. All rebels will burn." Within hours, hundreds of ships darkened the sky. Metal giants with no markings, no lights, no mercy. The Ghost Fleet, the last weapon of Velmora. Inside the command chamber, Vaxtree stared at the sky. "We don't have enough ships," someone said. "We don't need to match them," Darren said. "We just need to hit the heart." "You mean the throne?" Vaxtree asked. "No," he said. "The message." He turned to the team. "Patch me into every system, every screen, every ear." Within minutes, the people of Velmora heard him speak. "You can kill a rebel, but you cannot kill a question. You can silence a voice, but not a memory. You can erase names, but not truth. And you can burn cities, but not hope. My name is Darren. Vale, this is Vaxtree. We are not rulers, not saviors. We are what happens when fear loses. We are what comes after." The Ghost Fleet paused. Some captains turned. Others refused the Queen's orders. In space, thousands of red lights flickered, then turned off. They shut down their weapons and opened their gates. Rebellion was no longer hiding. It was here. Queen Zarella stood on her balcony, eyes wide as the sky above her filled with ships now carrying rebel flags. Her power, cracked, her crown tilting. And deep within the people, something ancient had been reborn. Faith, not in rulers, but in unity. The fall of a queen, rise of a family. The palace of Velmora stood tall, but it no longer felt untouchable. Its walls had seen centuries of rule. Now they trembled. Rebels marched through the silver gates, not with fire and rage, but with steady steps and determined hearts. They wore no armor. They carried no banners, yet their presence was louder than war. Darren and Vaxtree walked at the front, side by side. Not as queen and champion, but as something more dangerous. As truth. Inside the throne room, Queen Zarella waited. She had not run. She had not begged. She wore her crown. But she knew. The throne beneath her was already lost. When the doors opened, she didn't look surprised. "So," she said calmly, "you've come to take what you think is yours." Darren spoke first. "I came to offer you a choice." She laughed, a hollow sound. "You think I'm afraid of rebels? Of lies? I built this world." "Yes," Vaxtree said, her voice steady. But now it belongs to the ones who were never allowed to speak. The queen stood slowly. You want me to kneel? No, Darren said. We want you to listen. He placed the memory crystal on the platform. It glowed, images dancing in the air once again, the experiments, the lies, the stolen lives, the wars started by pride. As the room watched, many of the royal guards lowered their weapons. Some wept, some walked away. The queen's shoulders fell. You think this ends with truth? She whispered. Truth burns. Truth breaks. And when you leave, this world will tear itself apart. Vaxtree stepped forward. Then we'll help rebuild it. Zarella looked into her eyes she had once trained to kill, and for the first time, she looked small. You win, she said softly. The next day, Queen Zarella left the palace. Not as a prisoner, not as a queen, but as a memory. The council stripped her of title, but not life. Vaxtree made one request. Let her see the world without fear. Let her walk through the people she once ruled. Maybe then, she'll change. The new age had no need for revenge. It needed healing. A week passed, then a month. Peace didn't arrive all at once. There were still arguments, old wounds, stubborn voices. But something had shifted. Laws were rewritten. Human colonies were freed. Hybrids were finally given names, not numbers. And in the heart of the palace, where battles were once planned, a garden was planted. Green. Alive. Open to all, at the center of the garden stood a statue. Not of a king, not of a queen, but of two warriors, standing equal, hands joined, swords lowered. Beneath it, words carved in 3 languages. We were not born to rule. We were born to protect. On the edge of the garden, Vaxtree sat under a tree, her armor gone, her robe soft and simple. She looked up as footsteps approached. Darren walked toward her carrying something wrapped in cloth. She smiled slightly. What now? He unwrapped the item, a small stone pendant, carved with a mark of the old world. It's from the temple, ruins, he said. The last line of the prophecy was carved underneath. Vaxtree took it, reading slowly. And from the binding of warrior and stranger will come the child who walks both skies. She raised an eyebrow. A child? He laughed nervously. I mean, one day, not now. Unless... She looked at him for a long moment, then leaned her head on his shoulder. Maybe sooner than you think, she whispered. He turned to her. You're serious? She nodded. His eyes filled with something deeper than shock. Something close to joy. In the years that followed, their child became a symbol across the stars. Born of war, but raised in peace. Strong like her mother, kind like her father, and fearless in ways the world had never seen. They named her Sola, which meant light from 2 suns. And whenever people asked how the galaxy changed, how the war ended, and how hope returned, the answer was always the same. Because one human didn't, and one warrior didn't kill,